we'll fly through these. We've got a few new people, so it's good to see you on, guys. I haven't seen Telos Canton before, so you're very welcome.
Welcome, Fieldy and Cloud. Yao.
Hello, good afternoon. So this is Cloud speaking. So how are you doing, guys?
You're a little bit quiet there, for me anyway.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Nice to meet you guys. This is Cloud speaking from Telos Canton. And
Welcome.
I'm partner of Fieldy, and I'm glad to join the meeting. So this is my first time to join the meeting. So I wish to learn quite a lot from you guys. So thank you.
No problem. If you could load up if you're able to, if you could load up the agenda that is in the top of the chat and sign in at the bottom of that Google Doc, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, sorry about that. So the signal is weak here. So would you please repeat again? Sorry about.
Yeah, if you could load up the Google Doc that is in the top of the chat box, and if you could add your name to the roll call at the bottom of that document, that'd be fine. Thank you. If not, we can drop it in for you.
Okay, I will try to do that. Thanks.
Okay, what have we got at the minute? 21 participants already, guys. Fantastic. Did everybody remember it was an hour earlier, and you get hit in any of the channels that it was an hour earlier? So I tried to keep making myself a nuisance, but it looks like we're there.
You're pretty good at that, Jim.
Being a nuisance, thank you.
No, reminding people.
Thank you.
I saw it in every channel.
Yeah, just keep doing it. Okay, I think we'll just give it a few more minutes. I will. I'm not going to go over the takeaways from the last meeting. We know what we did. We voted on those governance documents, and that all went through fine. Thanks for that. It was a great meeting. We've got a lot done, and we've got to get quite a lot done again at the moment. So I'm just waiting to see if Azad's on the call. Does anybody know if Azad's going on the call? This is the first one, so his document. I feel slightly low to start without him, although we will do if we need to.
Sorry, did you say Adam? Adam's on the call.
No, Azad. Sorry.
Oh, Azad.
Yeah.
Didn't I read somewhere that he's travelling at the moment? I don't know if he's back, but
yeah, he's traveling. He is traveling. You know, this one's pretty simple. I feel like the others of us who work.
Yeah, I mean, I can manage that. It's no problem.
Okay, so if anyone's got, we haven't got any objections, we've got 21 on the call. That seems like a number that we use a lot. So shall we carry on with? Shall we carry on with the first document, which is the Telos?
Are we recording?
Yes, we are. I believe we're live. Yeah, thanks for that, Jerry. So have we put the live stream in the Telegram channel, Adam? Just out of a matter of interest. Okay. I just thought if you could drop the link in the Telegram channel for the live recording when you get around to it. Should we start anyway? Why don't we start doing that? Okay, then, so the data protection policy, the first link, if we could all have a look at that. I don't know whether someone, this is really my area, I don't know whether Syed, do you want to talk us through the document? I know Roger's put a few things on here that I can see. I don't know if somebody wants to share the screen and work through this. If we could make a start.
Yes, if someone can share, it's good. Otherwise, I can try, but let me check.
I can share.
Okay.
Thank you, Douglas.
So in the beginning, I think the name should be Telos Blockchain Network Data Protection Policy. So that I edited that thing. Mm-hmm. If anyone has no objection, this should be the proper name, not the Telos Data Protection Policy. So this was my comments.
That's something we've done on all the other documents. So I think we're.
Yes, and then the blockchain is highlighted. So I think Mark wanted to remove blockchain, but we can't remove that.
I already took care of it.
Okay. So, and I think there was comments from, I don't remember now, from Jim or Roger, that if we looked into the other companies' data protection policy, they are a bit longer, but they are longer because they process personal information, they take responsibility of confidentiality and other things. So those kind of policies each and every block producer should have. I will have for swedencornet. In this policy, we say that we are not responsible for the confidentiality of information. If you read bullet number 2, it tells that we are not responsible for the confidentiality. We only responsible for the integrity and availability. So, and since we are not responsible for the confidentiality, and people are going to acknowledge this via TBNO, this is good enough to have that. And then we don't have any employees. It's mentioned down.
Right. And if I may, Syed, the context for this, everyone, is this is what the blockchain itself, as validated and continued by the block producers, is actually responsible for. And that's since the blockchain, since the block producers and the blockchain do not select what information is added. You know, we've been very clear. We only validate blocks based on whether they are objectively valid or not. Everything else, any other information on it, is responsibility of the people who put it, who place it there. No. So that's why we can't make any of those.
Yeah, and if you ask me, according to the GDPR regulations, each and every block producer need to have their own policy, similar like you mentioned, EOS UK has mentioned, given reference to university. So that kind of policy should be on the website of each and every block producer. That has nothing to do with the TBN, Telos Blockchain Network.
Understood.
Yeah.
We are, so we do need to, just right up on top here real quick, we do need to figure out, well, obviously, hopefully today will be the day it's approved on, and the launch date itself, the activation date or the launch date will be the day it became operational on, or today. No, that would be the launch date. And then we are saying here that we're going to review it 12 months later. We can't actually force the future block producers to review it, but we can, based on adopting it, we can ask them to review it at that time. It's about the best we can do in a truly decentralized network. There's a little bit more. I'm going to scroll down since we've all seen the beginning, I think, and that is it. Basically, we don't have any employees. We will review this annually. It only applies to TBN, and if any future networks fork off of us, that they will have to have their own policy. Pretty straightforward, but it does get us into and it's pretty simple because it needs to be. But the goal, if I can try to speak for Azad, the goal is by having this, we set ourselves up for compliance and make ourselves an option for businesses that can only do business with institutions and organizations that have such a policy. if there's no questions, Jim, do you want to open it up to discussion or debate or voting, depending on?
Yeah. Do you just want to can you edit that document to make the changes to the title, Douglas? Do you want to do that?
Indeed, I will. Telos Blockchain Network Data Protection Policy. Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Yeah, so just delete that bit off the end. Yeah. And I think Jim might have accidentally just typed into the document there while we've been looking at it.
He no judgment.
No.
Have I done that?
It's okay. We can, get this stuff all taken care of. These things, we're voting on the content, not the formatting of the document. It looks like we're good. So I'm just gonna resolve these. I think they've been discussed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
If we could have someone to propose and second that we go for a vote on this, and if Douglas would like to type a question, we can do our usual vote.
I'll start typing.
Oh, I would love to be the one to propose the vote on this. Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second, Dan?
I second.
Okay, thank you. For anybody who hasn't been on the call before, what we do now is Douglas will write the question in the form of a yes, no, to approve or not to approve this document in the chat. And if, as soon as we say go, if you would like to write whether you approve or disapprove with a yes or a no, that will be, so then the votes will be counted up in the chat, and that's how we vote on this particular, on these particular documents. So we'll just wait for Douglas to type, and then as soon as Douglas types, I shall tell us all, and we shall vote on a document, which must be the fastest one we've ever done. So we're doing really well, guys. Yes, Josep has arranged a proxy from Telos Madrid. He's put that, he's mentioned that already in Slack, which is the way to go about doing the proxy. Thanks, Josep.
Okay, so that was a move in second to vote, right? Not a move in second to debate. Is that
to vote, please?
Okay.
Okay, then if you could vote yes, no, or if you wish to abstain, then please do so.
The Exchange Working Group furiously typing yes as quickly as they possibly can. Might have been the quickest one on the front end, this, but maybe on the back end it's been a bit of a drag. So great to get this one done.
Okay then. While they're going in, hopefully Adam will do a little tally for us, Adam, as we've been doing that for us, and Phil will take the notes for us as well. So that's fantastic. Thank you for that. Phil,
I'm going to queue up the next one, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do that. So the next one is the arbitrated minimum requirements. Douglas is going to queue that one up for us now. Obviously, if you want to view it in your, I suggest that you click viewing only if you've got the document open, and then you won't be editing it by mistake. Fancy doing that. Schoolboy error. Dear, oh dear. And Phil, would you be able to cut and copy the responses in the chat and post them on the agenda? I did that last time, and it just captures everybody's vote.
Sure.
Thank you. If you just copy the question and then all those yeses and nos and Adam's result at the end, and then we get it captured for posterity. I'm very careful with that word today. Okay then, so the next one is the arbitration minimum requirements. This is where we've got phase 1, phase 2, phase 1 and phase 2. I thought we had phase 3, but clearly don't. Oh dear, they're all rolling into one. Again, I think what I'll have to do is we've got some notes at the side that need resolving, but I'm going to hand over to Douglas, as this is more his thing than me, if he wants to talk through the document. And again, we'll open to debate, I think. Douglas, is that okay?
Yes, thanks, Jim. This is a much simpler document than the block producer minimum requirements. That's for two reasons. Number one, arbitrators, while they do have quite a bit of judicial power on the system, do not have the massive executive power of the block producers, and so we don't need to be reined in quite the same way. And also, we are trying to be actually quite accommodative to arbitrators. It's going to be, we're going to, I believe, for at least some time, we're going to have to take the position that if we want really good arbitrators, which is the key to this, that we keep it open. So we have two phases, and I believe the main difference in the phases is that in phase 2, we are envisioning being able to have a full disclosure of identity through some kind of hashed identity provider service, like we discussed with minimums. So just going right through really quick, we've got arbitrator. They must disclose their arbitrator entity ownership. An arbitrator can either be an individual, or it can also be like and I believe in the future it'll be a firm of several arbitrators. They have to disclose each beneficial owner along with entity percentage. They have to, and then for any arbitral judges that they have, this is in a firm type situation, they have to disclose who each one is, along with languages of proficiency. Secondary, and then they have to disclose that they have at least the equivalent of a 4-year college degree. We're looking for more, but I think that's these again are minimums. When we have to make sure, and we are going to help them with this, they have a strong familiarity with rules of arbitration, and they have an understanding of the mechanics of blockchain and EOCO, provided from a reading list that we will provide them. They have to disclose the identity for individual entity. If it is an individual entity or ownership, they have to disclose who owns them. It looks like that somehow got in there twice. I'm not quite sure.
This, I added a LinkedIn profile 1 day back. Do we need to have it or not?
Yeah, I don't. That's new to me. We didn't have that before. So what I'd suggest. So this one here, though, E is brand new. And it purely.
E and A are the same.
Yeah. E and
so
A
one of them has to go.
Right. So I'm going to take E. Do we feel? And then this is something. So this is something that we hadn't discussed yet. A LinkedIn profile. So
that was just I added 1 or 2 days back. So
that would be due for debate.
Yeah, if someone don't like it, they can remove it.
I have not discussed a LinkedIn profile with the 10 or 12 attorneys that I've spoken with. That would, I don't know how much that would sway their decisions, but I'm trying to make this as easy as possible to get them on board.
I agree that should that's probably a step too far, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and also as a point of protocol, I know this wasn't intentional, but if we have things that we haven't discussed in the group, like that, we need to advance the documents as they've been discussed in the group. So not that we're going to do this a lot. So if that would be something that would be raised as a suggestion, but we can't after we've passed these documents, we can't then add things to them. For example, there's 2 points that have come up to me on another document that I'm going to have to mention, but we can't present them. So I'm going to, I think we need to, propose adding them. Okay, so I'm going to delete them for now.
Can I just go back to the other point that you deleted, because I thought that had slightly better wording, you know, where A and E were the same, and you deleted E. I thought it had slightly better wording about business and individuals, but...
Okay, so E, right, we could pick either one, I suppose. I mean, A is the one that we actually had agreed to, is the disclosure of identity for individual or entity ownership for business entity. Disclosure of each beneficial owner of an arbitrator entity.
I know it's A, wasn't it? A and E we were looking at.
Yeah. So the difference between these is in A, and again, this is the one that we actually agreed to as a group, and there was discussion over the language. The disclosure of each beneficial owner of an arbitrator, along with percentage of ownership, versus disclosure of the entity or entity ownership. I think it's a little more clear that they also have to say whether they own 10% or 90% or 20% or what.
Yeah, actually, I got confused there. Ignore me. Carry on. I was looking at 1 and E. So yeah, you're absolutely right. 1A is better than E. Sorry.
Okay.
My apologies.
That's fine. We need to work through these things. It's good. I think it's a good process. I think these are simple. I think that I don't think we'd want somebody, you know, who didn't have a equivalent of a 4-year degree. Obviously, I think we want higher level than that. Is there any debate about the points?
I think
and does anyone want to add points? We can certainly add those points if we discuss them in this group.
I have a question. Maybe for phase 2, we should have a master's level. Phase 1 may be okay, 4-year, but bachelor, but phase 2 maybe master's. But this is just my personal thing. I mean,
I think we're aiming a bit higher there, can't we? Let's get this thing running and we can revise those details if we're dealing with multi-million pounds, you know.
Yep.
I've had attorneys who even have a 20 or 30-year experience as an attorney get some anxiety about the need for quote-unquote strong familiarity of the rules of arbitration. I mean, you can be an extremely brilliant attorney and feel like you don't have strong familiarity with the rules of arbitration. That's not that the strong familiarity couldn't be obtained, you know, in fairly short order, but these guys are inherently cautious, and strong familiarity has on more than one occasion raised some concern.
So could we change that to familiar with the rules of arbitration?
Yeah, exactly. Familiarity is good enough, isn't it?
Yeah, in light of that feedback from our core group of arbitrators, I'd suggest that we simply remove the word strong. Would that work for anyone?
I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
On my side.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. I don't think we need to vote on that. I think that's a good straw poll. The ayes have it. Thanks for that feedback. That's
okay. So, any other points that we need to discuss on that?
I think it looks okay to me if anyone wants to move to vote.
I move to vote.
I'll second it.
Okay. Right. Again, if Douglas could write the question, and we'll move to a vote in the. I
got smart and wrote it ahead of time.
Hey, I thought you might have done, Douglas.
Finally, it only took me 3 meetings.
Adam, when we're counting, you probably noticed that Joseph's doing 2 when we're doing the count on his one line. Okay then, guys. We've had pretty smooth sailing so far. So we've now moved on to Reg Arb, Human Contract Language Terms. So that's our next document. If Douglas will queue that up, if anybody wants to load that up from the link in the agenda. And once everyone's voted, we shall Adam will do his adding up and we'll drop that in. So it looks like it's a pretty unanimous job on that one. And we've got 24-0. So thank you very much for that.
Adam, so I noticed as we were moving on that Adam had suggested we also add the location country to both documents, the minimum requirements and to this. I actually think that's a pretty good idea. And I think that if we vote, if people agree to add it to this, and I think we should discuss real quick, we could also in our voting add it back to the other one. I could type the question that way.
Yeah, we'll do
Does
that.
anyone think that's a good idea?
Yes.
Someone doing a move for that?
Well, Douglas, let me ask you, based on your conversation with the attorney last night about jurisdiction, how did that pan out, and how does adding your location add into that discussion you probably had with the attorney last night?
Yeah, so Brett suggested I speak with an attorney last night who provided really good feedback. This is somebody who's going to be one of our first candidates. I think we have at least 4 candidates, which is pretty great. ECAF, by the way, has a total of 6, and none of them are attorneys. So we're off to a really good start. He did mention 2 things to me, and these seemed pretty important. And one is, when we'll go, I was going to wait on this, but let me just, since we're on it now. One is that he thinks that these people that the arbitrators are probably going to require some form of indemnification. And so when we come to the actual terms, I'm going to suggest that we have the Telos Foundation indemnify them. That will be in the form of an insurance policy that the Telos Foundation will need to purchase, indemnification insurance. And so that'll be up for discussion. He also pointed out to me that by not having anything saying jurisdiction and point of law and choice of law, that it makes it harder to select when you have. He's actually, let me put it this way. He said that if we had something saying this will be tried be read under the jurisdiction of such and such locality, then we could pick one that would have strong support for the rule of law and strong support for binding arbitration. He suggested one in the United States where there's basically, once binding arbitration has been called for, there's no trial, no hearing at all can be heard except for whether binding arbitration has been called for. So his suggestion really locked it in to helped us, right? Because without that, then any country could claim jurisdiction. Was what he mentioned. Now, I suggest that is, Brett, what was said. I suggest we wait on this and talk about it and move back to this document and talk about it later. But those are those 2 points that I referred to just a moment ago that I wasn't able to add in because we hadn't discussed them as a group. But that we will have to. I will propose we discuss. For here, the location is mainly as a way to let us have some knowledge about whether this person is in this arbitration firm or arbitrator is in a country where that is identified itself as unfriendly to the Telos network. so that additional cautions can be implemented for any arbitrators and or block producers in that country. That's the reason we Adam suggested adding it. With that, I would move that we add location to the disclosure, and that we when we vote, we also vote on adding it retroactively to the minimum requirements. Does anyone second?
Well, okay. If we're going to add the arbitrator's physical location, wouldn't it be just as important to, or would it be even more important to identify where they're licensed to practice if they're an attorney? Of course, they don't have to be an attorney. Oh, I don't know. I'm getting in the weeds here. I'm going to shut up.
Brett, I would say they don't have. We aren't requiring it. It's very nice, and we were hopeful that, but we're not requiring that, and therefore I think that actually
language is spoken.
Language is spoken. So that we already have that. And that is because we are trying to have a way to optimize the contract, so that if the parties and the language of the trial is going to be in one language, then we can optimize and find a set of arbitrators who also speak that language, so that we don't have to add translation into the cost of arbitration.
Okay, thanks for that.
But I did move that we add the location. Has anyone seconded that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Brett.
Okay. Having been moved and seconded, can we go for a? Can we do a vote?
Well, no, we're not voting on that. We're not voting on that for a moment, because you're going to put that in the question, aren't you, for the when we actually vote on this regard? Is that correct? Well,
we've only moved and seconded that whether we actually add that requirement, but we haven't. I think we could do like a voice vote.
Okay.
Yays and so
yes.
Yay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yay. And any nays? And please unmute if you're going to vote nay.
I think we're okay, Douglas.
Okay, great. I will add that as we discuss other portions.
Okay then. So the reg arbitrator contract, we haven't got Mark on the call, who has been very useful in marking sections that we're going back to. So I might just ask Phil if you could, as we go through these, if there's anything that we get stuck on that a section that we asked to go back to, if you could just keep a note of that for us as we're going down the call. So I was going to suggest, Douglas, that again, I read the title of each one of these sections, and if anyone's got any problem with each section, then we can talk about them briefly. So I will just start to do that. Douglas is still typing the document, but that's fine. So intent of action on the regard is, has anybody got any problems with section 1 with the wording? Would they like to bring it up? Again, if you have got any issues and you want to ping me in the chat, I can make sure I can flag these as well. Oh, thank you, Beth. Mark is on the call. I didn't see him. I apologise. So intent of action, point 1. I'm not hearing anything. Point 2, nomination. Has anybody got any problems with point 2? Or section 2, sorry. Okay, section 3, disclosure of arbiter. I'm getting a silence, guys. Not that I'm unhappy about that. 4, this is maybe penalty enforcement via arbitration tribunal. Anybody got any issues with that section?
I mean, this is really not my forte. I don't think it's many of our fortes, right? So just out of curiosity, how much of this was changed from EOS's agreements? That were
EOS has no agreement.
Oh,
yeah,
no
huge change.
Okay.
Huge change from
Gotcha.
0
They
to
don't
100.
elect him. They EOS says that it's the ECAF, and so be it.
Okay.
And then they, as an organization, they make their own rules. So this is a democratic. Ours is a democratic process.
Yeah, and maybe you should know that they don't have any governance in EOS, and if they have maybe like 1%, and we are on 100%. If you want to compare, so it's a lot of administrative work. Maybe we will have in the future. I don't know. Let's see.
The question going forward is the EOS people are going to be saying, well, what does Telos do about this?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's keep it together. I'm going to keep going down. It might not be our area of expertise, but I have to sit through networking stuff too. So yeah.
Fair enough.
So where are we going to? Another role, okay?
Can I just flag? It says Telos Network, and have we changed all of those to say Telos Blockchain Network now?
We will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Your usual eagle-eyed editing skills there.
Typically, in these processes, there is a little a chance to dot I's and add periods and things like that on.
Okay, then. So I've got to section 5, resignation removal of inability to perform obligations.
I have this just a comment on 6. If he does not agree to unreg by himself,
we discussed. So that's a good one, but we discussed that whereby that can actually be done. We discussed that. So here, this is the only failure to recuse down below is the only thing at all that we offer that we have any penalties for, and the penalty is not being able to arbitrate for 1 year to 3 years. And in the actual arbitration rules and procedures, we discuss the rules and procedures for removing somebody, which is 3 other elected arbitrators can remove an elected arbitrator.
Yeah, but shouldn't not this be a quick automatic action? That's what my point.
No, that is time consuming. Because, well, I would argue, in my opinion, it should not be, because when they're removed, right, then the case stops and basically needs to start over again, right? The arbitrator, we need to have people of high moral character doing this. If we find out that we don't, then we can sanction them later. But the who is to know, honestly, during the case, because these things are generally quite private during the case, so there's no one who really should know these things during the case, right? I think we need to search for people of high moral character, vote them out if they prove not to be, or sanction them if that can't happen. I think it's a very different standard than for block producers, frankly. But that's my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you happy to resolve that, Syed?
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you. I've been practicing this one, recusal. The new band. Partiality. Section 8. Getting there.
Yeah, again, ownership, direct and indirect. I think we should only use the word ownership, or we should not use the words direct or indirect.
I'm sure we'd made a similar edit on another document, did we not?
Yeah, just removing the word
direct.
Yeah, remove the word direct. Yeah.
Is there any dissent against that? Speak now. Having heard no dissent, I'm going to remove that.
Okay, arbitration personnel. So. No, okay. Section 11, amending human language terms of Rodar contract.
This is the same as in the other one. It just says it can be amended, and that if they stay for 24 hours afterwards, then although I should turn that into block time, but I can do that afterwards if everybody trusts me to do so. Or then what was the block time for 24 hours?
Was that Jim's favourite? 108?
180, I believe.
180,000, was it?
Yep. Look at us.
Look at that.
It's actually one of Jim's catchphrases wandering around going 180. It's from the commentary of the darts, in case anybody's interested.
It's a very UK thing, that is, guys.
Maximum score in a game of darts.
Okay. And then finally, there's a suggestion to move this to the definitions to the front. In some it's in the front, and some it's in the back. I think it's very common for the definitions to be at the end. The advantage of not moving it is we wouldn't have to move it.
I second.
There's no functional difference in how the document would ever be applied. So I move we just leave it as is.
And I second.
Okay. No dissent.
Can we have
move to vote on it?
Move to vote on it, please.
All right, 1 second.
Thank you.
Please second that.
Seconder. Come on, someone second it.
Oh, yes, I second that.
Yeah, very democratic. You're just bullying people. Not fun.
That is how most democracies work. Certainly that's how my democracy works right now.
Fair enough. Okay, so Douglas will be typing a question, and we have also decided that to add in location on this as well. If you would all like to, I feel like a game show host, if you'd all like to press your button now.
Can I phone a friend?
You haven't got any, Roger.
You're it.
Yeah, your one friend's already here. Oh, look at all your friends you already have here, Roger.
All over the world. Yeah, we're all thinking this meeting's really easy, aren't we?
I think we're all just no, it's because they're so well written. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's right. Because there's nothing.
It's all the thousands of hours of groundwork that's gone into it.
Should be enshrined for 1,000 years. I apologize. I did not get the explainer version up of the other one as quickly. I was kind of sick and everything, but I did get one up last night, and I have it here. Hopefully, people had a chance to look at that.
I have put it on the agenda, Douglas. So if there is a link on there to it.
Excellent. And I guess we'll do our what I'm not seeing on the main document, by the way, is a lot of comments. In fact, I'm not seeing any comments on the main document. So if it's okay, well, I guess we'll keep checking back and forth, but unless comments come in, we'll just use the explainer version, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the main document. I've got it open as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back and share then. Okay, so this is, are we ready to move on?
Yes, please do, Douglas. I'm just doing stuff.
Okay. So the arbitration, so we start out the first, or shall we just go Jim, maybe you were good. You were good at this.
Okay, so
some of these things are just you know we define it. We start out. Maybe we should just start off on what's people's pleasure. This version, the raw document, or this version, the explainer.
Well, we'll still use the explainer, I think, Douglas, because
we'll do.
It's there then. And I mean, I know this is a big document, and hopefully people have had a chance to read through it. Like we say, we have had these things up for a while. So I think I'm just going to go through the same process as before, as talk to each section, and then if there's anything that we feel as a group of the governance group, sort of Adam, Syed, or Douglas or myself, or anybody else who's been in there, wants to flag up, then that's fine. And then if anyone else has got anything he wants to flag up, if we start discussing a lot of things, again, we'll note the section and come back to it, and we'll make a note. So deep breath, and we shall make our way through, if that's okay. So
can I say one thing, Jim?
Yeah.
And that is, if you haven't had a chance to read through that, to spend a lot of time reading through this, we understand that it's a deep document and it requires a lot of reading about the general rules of arbitration. I would say a number of people have spent hours and hours, like we've spent weeks on this, with 3 meetings a week at about 2 hours a meeting. And we also got outside input from attorneys and other people along the way that we folded into it. So my hope is that, you know, all comments are important, but if in doubt, please trust the process that's gotten us to this point.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. And again, if you have anything that you want to ping me on the chat, so I know if and when to stop, because I don't want to. Again, we need to move through this, but I want to make sure that everyone's had their chance to say what they want to say. Okay, then. So section 1, arbitration on the Telos blockchain network. You can see we've got the contract and we've got Douglas explainer there. Anybody got any particular issue with that? Again, if on the main document you want to type any suggestions, then I've got that viewed at the same time.
I did put in a comment in there, just missing word in on the explainer. But I've put it in as a suggestion, but it's not showing there. But it's so if you see a word in capital letters, the word
I see
is missing.
Oh, that's my bad. Thank you.
That's okay.
It's more the document than Dulce's.
It's because it's not in. I'll go through it. Yeah, that's the explainer document. I'll go through. Thank you for that. We don't need to. We're not adopting my chatty version. We're adopting the document itself, the gray.
Okay, then. So the next thing is we have the definitions, which if anybody really wants to get their head around that, then that's absolutely fantastic. But we have, like Douglas says, we have been through those. I'll just wait for a second. I've got nothing in the chat. Okay, then. So I've got limited jurisdiction is the next one. That can be a slightly interesting point. If anyone's got any comments on that one. Okay.
So this is potentially. So I do have those two notes that that Brett raised that we need to discuss, and this is where we would add the words, the jurisdiction of this agreement shall be, and the choice of law. This is where we would add that. I think it protects us. I think that if we discuss this right now, we are probably going to spend a lot of time on discussing where that should be. So I would suggest that we flag it for discussion about where we might add the jurisdiction and choice of law here.
Okay.
So default arbitration forum is the next one, and we're essentially saying that elected arbitrators on Telos are the default arbitration forum.
Okay, thank you, Douglas.
Yep, and back to you, Jim.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just typing. Alternative, have you got anything on section 4, section 5? Alternative arbitration forums. There's a note in green there from Douglas. Is that something you want to come back to, Douglas?
I don't know if this is the right paragraph to mention this, and I guess I should have mentioned this beforehand to Douglas. But one thing that a fellow brought up yesterday or the day before is there's really nothing stopping any person who feels aggrieved from writing a complaint letter to the legal licensing board of that attorney's jurisdiction. We can say we hold these fellows or ladies harmless, but that's not going to stop them from having to answer a complaint that's filed against them with their licensing board. And I don't know, we can't stop every bad thing from happening in life, but that is something that was brought up as a significant concern.
Right. So Brett brought that up to me. And again, I don't know how to respond to that, frankly, because, I do know how to respond to that. And that is that I don't think we have any power to protect people against such a thing, right? People can write letters. There are professional licensing organizations. We can't, what we're doing is we are saying that they are held harmless, and we are actually, going to discuss here adding, having indemnification insurance for them. I don't think we can save them. I don't think we can prevent that, as you said. I don't know how this document could envision that.
I agree with you, Douglas. I'm just mentioning it just for the sake of completeness.
Okay, thank you, Brett. And by the way, everybody, Brett has done an amazing job as a leader of our arbitration group in going out and finding people, and through that process of not only finding them, but discussing this with them, he's brought back very important feedback into this. I think that that's can be commended. And I want to just make sure everybody knows that, because most of that is going from these outside arbitrator candidates to Brett, and to me, and then back to not a lot of people are aware of that because of the channels it's happening in, but it's
humorously they all say they're not going to give us free legal advice, and then they reviewed the documents and go on to give us free legal advice. So this is one of the most perused documents we probably have.
That's actually true. It's really nice, because we've been looking for actual firms that would take this on, and because of the pioneering nature of what we're trying to do, there simply aren't a lot. And I don't know how. I mean, we were never, and it became apparent recently that there was no way to find that group and then also get it through a process before we could vote on it. It may be something that we look towards doing and amending it. Anyway, I just really, my hat's off to Brett. He's done a lot of work that's less visible than most, because it's not happening in Slack and Trello.
Okay, thanks for that. So
yeah, well done, Brett, and hopefully the line of lawyers outside for free cortisone shots is not causing too much of a problem for you.
No, it's all good. I work with lawyers all the time, and I'm used to them.
Okay then, so can we move on, guys? I've got a bit lost now. Are we on no arbitrary liability? Yeah. Anything else on that? Have we discussed that now?
This is where we would most likely add indemnification by the Telos Foundation.
But we're not in a position to do that yet, are we? Is that going to be something that we can review later?
Well, we could add it here, and arbitration. It would probably mean that arbitration wouldn't start until the Telos Foundation would. The Telos Foundation would initially indemnify them, and then as soon as possible, once there was an executive administration, they would need to go out and find a policy and secure a policy for them. That'd be one of the early tasks.
Okay, so do we want to come back to this, or do you want?
I think we should continue our process of marking this for.
Okay, so let's mark section 6 then as well, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, all decisions are final. That sounds pretty straightforward. I'm going to move on to case classes.
So what we've done here, I'm just going to do a slow scroll so you can see it, and then we'll come back. We have divided these cases into different types of classes that we feel are going to represent every type of case that we can imagine, and of course, a miscellaneous. The reason to divide these up, there's 15 types. The reason to divide these up is so that the smart contract can know which ones can be handled differently, and also so we can divide, set different minimum fees and whatnot for certain things based on their most common level of difficulty. For example, the first one, lost key replacement, and we may go through each of these, but on EOS,
we can't go through each of them.
Okay, great. You're right. Okay, because everyone's read it. I forget. So that's the reason. For example, an emergency intervention has a different process than almost anything else. The thing we added most recently, which is an accused block producer, right? This is what from our Tuesday vote, we added this process, and so we've decided that this would have priority. So changing these up into different types of things allows us to handle them differently and more expediently and more fairly and more economically for people, rather than just submitting something and then the arbitrator needs to figure out what they're going to get. That's what that is. I assume everyone's read it at this point.
Well, it's also that the fact that there are 15 there, so I think proves that there's been a lot of people thinking about it. So I just think it shows that we have had due process. And if anybody's got anyone they want to ping particularly, then we'll stop. Otherwise, we will not get through the document. Right.
Fair enough. Thank you, Jim.
So I've not seen anybody really going against anything of that. And again, I just think, as Douglas said, we've got to trust the process on when someone brings up 15 different things. I think that shows rigor. Okay, so section 9, arbitrator parameters set by block producers. Arbitration parameters set by block producers.
The thinking here is that in order for this to be responsive, it can't be there has to be part of it, just the parameters, not the main. The structure is here and must be amended by ratify amend, but the actual parameters, such as how many arbitrators may serve at any given time, what some of the fees are, those are going to be set in a table that is determined by a 2/3+1 vote of block producers, so this can be responsive to system needs. That's the
okay.
reason for that.
I'm not hearing any dissent on that, or seeing any anywhere. So we shall drop on to 10, which looks at arbitrators are not employees. We can't employ anybody as such, as we aren't an entity to employ. That sounds pretty straightforward. 11, initiating and responding to a case. This might need a little bit of thought, or if anyone's got any comments on this one.
This has had a lot of thought. It was also because this has also had feedback from which does not mean we can't talk about it. But this is also, of course, we can talk about anything. This has also gone through work with the development group in figuring out how to turn this into a smart contract interface. And actually, Peter Buice went out and did some additional legal research and brought back some really good ideas there as well, which we then folded back in under discussion from the working group. This is basically how a case is filed and responded to.
Okay, thanks for that. Anybody got any burning legal issue regarding that? No? Okay then. So section 12, choice of arbitrator. Yes. We did spend a lot of time on this, and we went through quite a few different scenarios. And I think myself, Adam, Syed, and one or two others sort of did quite a few, sort of gained this as much as we possibly could. So if anyone's got anything they want to flag on it, then please let us know.
Thoroughly vetted, in my opinion.
Arbitrator seniority, that is pretty cool, very easy one.
There's no seniority.
Yeah. Arbitrator recusal, second time he said it properly. Anybody got any comments on that one? That's quite a... And that leads on to the next section of 15, assigning arbitrator removal. Assigned arbitrator removal.
This allows, when necessary, if somebody drops off the face of the earth or something, for 3 other arbitrators to come in and remove them.
Okay. What does it say in EOS about that, Douglas? Oh no. Okay, we'll carry on, shall we? All right.
I don't know.
Notice of arbitration case.
Basically, we'll use on-chain methods to notify, and hopefully it leaves it pretty open, because we're hoping that better systems will arrive, but we'll basically use the best way to notify that it is available.
At all times in blocks, as usual. Okay, 17, filing of a counter case.
Basically, if somebody has a counter case, they will be heard together for efficiency.
Yeah, and joining a case.
Similarly, if there are multiple parties that have a case against the same person, they will, at the arbitrator's discretion, be joined. And one of the reasons for that is that let's say somebody has a big account that's stolen, that is accused of being stolen a lot of funds, rather than me being the only, going in first and getting all mine back and then having less available for other people. One of the reasons is to be able to have everybody have to equally, split up what funds are available, rather than having it be like a race to file situation.
Okay, anybody need any more clarity? Are we okay to move on? We've passed halfway of the documents. Language of arbitration proceedings, number 19.
The arbitrator decides based on what language the contract was in and whatnot.
And again, we did a lot of talk regarding how that's going to work, and that's been thoroughly vetted, as Douglas says, and I don't seem to be able to. Okay, translation of proceedings.
If you translate it, it's at your cost.
Okay, nothing coming to me on that. Expert witnesses.
You can have them again at your cost.
Okay.
Arbitrators can pass on the cost to who they believe, as they feel is fair.
Nature of arbitration proceedings. No.
This just defines each of the phases.
Arbitration in absentia.
Nice. Well done, Roger. This means that so the point of this is there's going to be a lot of cases where somebody where no one responds, right? If no one responds because somebody's, is actually guilty of what they were, they're not going to show up, and we can try the case without them.
Okay, thank you. Presentation of evidence.
This is evidence is supposed to be presented on chain where possible, but we acknowledge the fact that there's going to be certain kinds of evidence that are you're not going to want to put your identification documents and whatnot to be live forever on the blockchain. So those can be sent through off-chain methods, and what will happen to the arbitrator, and the arbitrator will receive those and then record on chain if they're accepted, and simply a description. So it would be like picture of passport, right? Exhibit G, picture of passport, something like that. So it remains documented, but the evidence itself is not placed on.
Okay, thank you. General preference for cryptographic evidence. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. 26, proceedings.
This is the big one. So it talks about really quickly. It talks about the how the proceedings will happen. Video conferencing, or just basically the arbitrator's choice. Mainly Zoom calls. The arbitrator can decide whether attorney's fees can be collected. You have some time after about 10 days after a case to correct clerical errors. If somebody fails to comply, either party, they can be sanctioned by the arbitrator in the arbitrator's judgment. If the parties negotiate an agreement once arbitration has begun, they need to present that to the arbitrator for acceptance. There are such things as small claims. We're trying to set up a way that in small cases to be heard quickly. Small claims threshold will most likely be set by the block producers in that schedule. And interrogatories means that the parties at the arbitrator's judgment will be able to pose direct questions to each other. Those are the procedures.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any burning issues with the legal procedures? It's looking very quiet out there. Okay, so inclusion of precedents, which as with brand new might be slightly problematic, but
we envision that actually. We're saying that we want for equal justice across the system, it's best to include precedents. As this is brand new and a brand new area to boot, we understand that earliest precedents may be reviewed and not as we kind of grow as a system.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any thoughts on that? Okay. Identification of additional accounts. 28. All quiet. 29. Scope of decision. Again, we've got a one-liner there from Douglas. If we want to read it, anything from anybody?
Basically, the arbitrator has broad powers to decide this as they see fit, as they see best.
Okay.
Best see fit.
Execution of decision.
This describes how these decisions will actually be executed, which is by the block producers. The arbitrator will hand off actual transactions to be done. Crucially, it requires only 1/3. It's called a minimum or a small majority of the block producers. That envisions a number of things. Just swift justice; these are already duly processed, and also in case there's pressure from some government on these, this allows many block producers to remove themselves from the decision making, and hopefully head off government pressure there.
Okay, anybody on that one? Accusation of arbitration
malfeasance.
Oh, well, that might be it. transatlantic thing.
I'm sure that's just an Americanism. This just basically says that if an arbitrator is accused, it must always be heard by 3 arbitrators.
Okay. Anybody on that one? No. Okay.
Does there need to be something in there that specifically addresses the fact that this is the only way that can be addressed?
By it being the only, it already is there, Brett.
That was Jerry, I think.
Or Jerry. I'm sorry. I don't know who that was.
No, that was me, Brett, but that's fine. You answered it. I appreciate it.
This Brett. Apologies. Okay. External courts.
So we're saying that we're neither going to we're just essentially not participating in the external court system because largely because we because there are many court systems and it's not for us to determine which are legitimate or illegitimate or whatnot. This is solely regarding blockchain recordations. So that's the point here. It's bold. I think we need to do it so that we don't get every court in the world making demands upon us, whether or not they're of any legitimacy.
Okay, thank you. Anybody on that? So the next section is exhibits of parameters of schedules, which is basically a table of.
This is a starter table. This is the schedule that we decided the block producers can change at any time by a 2/3 plus 1 vote. And so we've set in what we think are the right ones, but this stuff can all be easily changed. The other stuff can, is hard to change. So I think that we put in our best guesses. Much of this relies on what the value of Telos is at the time. That's another reason. So to keep these things affordable, I would suggest that since these are easily changed, we don't go column by column on this. That becomes a responsibility of the block producers in the future.
Okay, then. So if we want to scroll back to section 3, Douglas, that is our first area of discussion, and it's all around whether you want to put in the additional piece around what's gone. I can't remember what it was now.
So I believe there were 3. Am I correct that there were 3 areas of discussion with 3?
Yeah. 4 and 6.
4 and 6. Okay, great.
This is the jurisdiction. So what was suggested,
okay, so if we are going to make a change here, the suggestion would be that we add a terrestrial jurisdiction, and one that is protective of the rule of law in general. So perhaps not North Korea, for example, not to pick on North Korea, and one where within that there's a high level of protection for the binding arbitration. So so do we want to, I guess before we get down into the weeds on what that might be, are we agreed that we want to take that advice and add that protection?
Yeah, this is Brett. Well, that's obviously been a big concern amongst the attorneys, and if we don't get their cooperation, we're sunk. So we kind of need to defer to their concerns, I think.
So I propose that we handle this in two ways. In two phases. First, we discuss if we want to add that, and it sounds like we do, and then we discuss what actual jurisdiction to add. So I'm going to move that we add language. Does anyone second that move?
I second, yeah.
Can we have so ayes? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Here.
And nays?
Aye.
Any nays?
Don't think so.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now we need to discuss where that would be. This attorney suggested the laws of the United States of America because it's a friendly rule of law, and specifically the state of Florida because it is generally crypto friendly, and it has that key element that that no one will open up. They never open up the question of binding arbitration. That is somebody who was an attorney in the state of Florida, so he knew those laws better. I'm not going to assume that we're all just, this is a worldwide group is going to go for the United States. That's one suggestion. I think you guys should discuss it, and I'm going to. Justin Buck also suggested Dutch law, and maybe Justin, you can tell us why that was. I think Justin may not have a microphone, and so maybe you could type that into the chat. Meanwhile, I'm going to type in some basic language around this.
I think the EOS proposal was containing the Dutch law, and so that would suggest that some research has been done around that. But clearly, that is something that perhaps we ought to find out where is the most crypto-friendly state and country in the world, and how we would do that.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's unlikely we would be able to understand right now what country would be best, right? And we're not voting on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction. So perhaps we're talking about adding a country, which can then be changed through some mechanism at a later date if it is deemed preferable to be somewhere else.
Well, we're going to have to. So what makes this valid is that everyone has agreed to this. So right from the start, and we can't really change that so much. I would suggest why don't we write this and we modify it in our call on Tuesday.
How about we say something that can be easily changed, such as jurisdiction will be based upon the locations that are the most friendly to blockchain. Say that in a legal way, but in other words, not pin yourself down to Florida or China, because things change. I mean, Wyoming gets blockchain friendly. Next year Wyoming may not be blockchain friendly. So just leave it to jurisdictions felt amenable by the Telos community or something like that.
My understanding is that we have to pick one. We have to pick one jurisdiction that this will go to, right?
I think that was the point, yeah, wasn't it?
That's what makes it enforceable.
From China, yeah. So Telos Canton, our idea is that we believe that maybe the China's law would not in the near future. I don't think the Chinese law would allow to have this kind of the renewals for that. So I believe maybe the laws we believe from states would be the better choice. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Cloud. I think that's probably likely under the current PROC laws, that would probably not be one of our candidates, but are stronger candidates for the choice of law.
Sorry, why do we have to pick one? Couldn't we have a group responsible for picking the current jurisdiction, and then that could change depending on voting?
Because the reason we need to pick one is basically everyone says, when in doubt, the laws of this jurisdiction will rule. And all we're trying to get them to go, what we're really trying to get people to happen is send it to a jurisdiction where they're going to say, oh, this is a binding arbitration. We have no rule. It all has to go into the binding arbitration. That's all we're trying to point it to someplace in the world where, number one, they're going to say, oh, it's binding arbitration. And number two, the legal system there is strong enough that somebody can't just say, yeah, well, but I'm going to do whatever I want because I'm the king of this land and forget what the laws say. So we need someplace where people care what laws actually say is important. And secondarily, where the law then says that once something calls for binding arbitration, then you can't touch it. Those are the things we're looking for.
This is Brett. As far as I know, the only positive recommendation we've had so far is Florida. We haven't had any recommendations for or against any other locations by someone who's knowledgeable and working in the area. So we've only got one recommendation from someone who's, an expert in the area.
We've only sought one. Potentially what we could do is we could put that in so that we have something, and then we can agree that we're going to research it over this weekend, find other places and change and choose to change it. That's basically the same as leaving it blank and choosing to add it later, except that if we don't find any place, at least we have something that we've agreed to. What do people think about that strategy?
Maybe you want to research Spain too, because I believe arbitration decisions are non-challengeable.
Where?
In Spain.
In Spain?
Yeah, I believe so. So maybe you can research that.
Yeah,
that's what I'm proposing.
I
actually think it's
research on and just need to get one in now.
Sorry?
I was saying, yeah, everybody's got a suggestion, and there's lots of different countries to research, but we just need to agree on one to put in now, don't we? So,
well, I will try to send you some information.
One other
I know that gambling companies and crypto companies, they are moving.
Breaking up, Syed. Sorry, do you want to type it in the chat?
Alta, but I myself have not looked into that.
So I think that an English-speaking country, may have a small benefit since these documents are written in English. I don't know. Aside from I certainly, as an American citizen, don't want to push for the United States of America to be the seat of this. Honestly, I am fine with someplace else. As long as it's a strong rule of law country, Spain certainly would be. Estonia, I think, would be. As long as they have, they're generally crypto friendly. As long as they, and more importantly, actually, that they are discussing, that they trust they have strong rules around binding arbitration. And then in a very small way, if English could also be a major language there due to the fact that these are in English, I think those would be helpful. It looks like we're getting a lot in discussing. I think we could pick any, and then let's pick one to put in, and then let's discuss on Tuesday.
I would sort of don't really want to go for a yay or nay. I mean, could we go with Dutch law to start with? Rather, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the USA, if I'm perfectly honest. But
I'm fine with that. Me too. I am as well, actually. I think that Dutch law was called for in the EOS one because it was a proposal by EOS Amsterdam. Swiss, a lot of things go under Swiss law.
Yeah.
I think if we were going to pick one, that probably would not be too bad.
I think if we need to pick one,
Estonia has that whole e-citizen thing. They're super friendly. I just don't know the answer. I think several people have said anything but USA. So let's remove USA. I'd say as a default, let's remove the USA. If we decide to go back to it, then let's. So the places that have been suggested are Switzerland, Malta, Estonia, Singapore, or Hong Kong.
And let's not forget Antarctica.
I don't think they.
It was a suggestion.
Okay, I did. I don't think that they have. I don't think that binding arbitration is amongst penguins is.
Yeah, Douglas,
shall we discuss? Shall we have 2 minutes of discussion, 3 minutes of discussion between Switzerland, Malta, Estonia, Singapore, and Hong Kong? I would say Hong Kong is technically. Well, it's supposed to be its own country. There's been a lot of influence lately from the PROC, and so I would say let's remove that I would suggest we remove that and discuss Switzerland, Malta, Estonia, or Singapore as very strong candidates. I think.
I also think we should consider Bermuda as well. I personally met with their Minister of National Security earlier this year, and they are looking to the government. They're looking to attract organizations, foundations like the Telos Foundation, and are creating laws to reflect that. So I'm not sure if you guys were familiar with that, but we should probably consider them as well.
Okay, the British Virgin Islands also have very strong, are English and have strong laws towards protecting. So maybe those 6 then?
Is it your intention to vote on that now or to put that into Slack?
My intention, what I would propose is that we have a discussion. We get something in as an actual, so we don't have a blank line, something in that we all feel comfortable with enough that then we can come back and do some research and have a single point discussion on Tuesday. But I'd like to have.
Okay, Jerry.
How about in one of these locations and list the 6?
We have to pick one. But we can come back to it on Tuesday and change it if we don't think we picked a good one. I feel really Switzerland, Malta, Switzerland, Estonia, those things.
Switzerland,
Singapore, they have.
We could pick one and do some research and come back and do it on Tuesday because I mean we've got a RAM call in 30 minutes also.
Yeah, so I suggest why don't you guys talk? I'm going to do some typing. Why don't you guys talk and we'll change it. But you know, pick one of those we mentioned. I think any one will be as good as any other in a way.
Well, as chair, I seem to have some false authority here. I'm going to suggest that we pick Switzerland and then move this to the Slack discussion over the weekend and have it as a single item for the meeting on Tuesday. So if we can get through it, I've actually captured some of the chats in a document. So I'll put that on Slack and we can talk that over in the weekend and we'll talk it through on Tuesday when we're not coming up against the RAM call, because we have spent quite a long time on this now.
Does somebody other than me then want to second Switzerland, just for the sake of being able to move us on?
Justin, thank you. He seconded it in the chat. Thank you, Justin.
Second.
Brilliant. So we're going with Switzerland and moving on to point 4, Douglas, please.
Okay, I'm still typing, so
Okay.
Somebody.
So if we have a look at point 4, I've now got to refresh my mind as to what the issue was on point 4.
Had anybody raised?
Sorry, Roger, what was it?
Who had raised the point on section 4?
Douglas had.
Well,
What was my point?
I wouldn't like to say Douglas.
Well, I don't. So, in order to have a consistent, I don't have a point on. I personally don't have a point on 4.
Okay, so number 6 then, please.
And number 6 is where we would add indemnification.
Right. Okay.
I move that we add an indemnification insurance policy funded by the Telos Foundation.
seconded.
Okay. I think Douglas may well type that. Thank you for that, Jerry. It does sound quite a good way to go. Anybody got any thoughts on that?
Sorry, it is possible that the Telos Foundation won't continue if it's not funded, right? They're going to always have money to do that, to have an insurance policy.
True, but would we then be able to go back to this document in the event of the foundation being wound up and then amend this document to take account of that?
We would have to. I mean, it points to the importance of it ongoing. If it is in the form of an insurance policy, then that insurance policy would persist until its next premium would be due.
And there are a lot of things that would have to get wound down if the foundation stopped.
Yeah, so I think, although you make a good point, James, I think we'd have to address that in quite a wide range of areas if that was the case.
This is Brett. As someone who has to buy malpractice insurance, I can tell you that's kind of a can of worms. Number one, would we buy one policy for all 3 or 4 or 6 or 15 or 20 people? They would charge different amounts depending on who they are and how many we have. If people are voted in and out like they have been on the top 21 of EOS, I don't expect it's going to be that volatile, but does that mean we're constantly going to be dropping insurance on this person and picking up insurance on the new guy who comes in? I mean, we're opening up a real can of worms there.
Can we
I think it needs to be done, but I think we need to figure out the details on that because it's not easy.
I mean, hopefully the idea would be that the foundation would do the legwork on that. Could we propose that the foundation does that rather than actually says it does? Is that a way we can get around it?
I think that's our only option. There's no other group. There's no other entity within this. I mean, that's why, right? There's no other entity to do it.
We've got to get to the stage where
I do agree. I do agree with I mean, I agree that you're right about that. I don't know any other way we could indemnify them. And I tend to agree that without indemnification, we're not going to get very many people coming on board.
I think it's a valid. Sorry, I was just going to say, once it's all up and running and you've got an ecosystem of Telos arbitrators, then you would like to think that at some point that responsibility moves to that organization, the same way Brett was talking about it's something he deals with his organization. So we're kind of talking about the starting point, aren't we? And maybe that will be introduced later on where the arbitrated companies take on that risk themselves or that cost. Right,
they may do that. I think that if we're going to have a system, a justice system, you know, justice systems in most countries are funded partially by public money and partially by the private fees for that. It just goes to the importance of keeping the Telos Foundation ongoing if we can. Hopefully, and that's up to the Telos voters to understand the importance of that.
So can we? I'm going to say that we're happy with the wording that you've got there, Douglas, unless anyone's going to scream that we haven't.
Okay.
Well, I would just probably like to agree that it's okay on the basis that we don't talk about anywhere else in any of the documentation about the Telos Foundation. What would happen if the Telos Foundation didn't exist? We don't talk about that, do we? So there's no point introducing it at this point, I think.
No. So
if it doesn't exist, it can't do anything.
Let's not go down that particular line, otherwise it's like. So I suggest that, does anybody are we in a position to move to a vote on this document? And if so, would anyone like to propose and second that?
I call for the vote.
Thank you, Jerry.
I'll second if nobody else does.
Did you get that, Phil? Jerry's called for the vote. Roger second.
Yes.
Okay, having been called, I will paste the question in.
Okay, so while Douglas pastes the question in, we're asking whether we're going to ratify this document as is. And if you'd like to type away and vote, Adam, if you'd like to add up, that'll be fantastic.
If we have voted this in, which seems to be the direction we're going, we will have completed all our governance documents.
Woo!
A big thanks to everyone who worked really, really hard on the governance working group. Those meetings were kind of fun in that we were all working together to do something very hard, but they were a lot of work.
Another green check mark.
Indeed, and more. Wow. Thanks, everybody.
I think Douglas is a bit stumped for words, because I think it's one of those things that sort of once we've got there, you don't quite know what to think. But I would also like to thank Adam, Douglas, Syed, and all the other guys who have been on the calls constantly. And obviously Douglas has done a lot of work, but also Adam, I think, needs a little bit of a mention in dispatches for his diligence on that work as well.
It was hard to find out how to make him speechless.
Yeah.
Well, my work's done. And my work here is done now.
So that's great. Thank you, everybody. If we can, we're still voting, but we're getting a lot of yeses. If Adam will do his sums and stick that in the bottom there, so that's fantastic.
I got a question about moving forward, since we've got 20 minutes before our first RAM call, which is pretty important, but I also want to be involved in the tip discussion. Is the tip discussion going on next? Well,
I was going to suggest that we can do the tip discussion, although we are going to have a big window to do that on Tuesday, and I was rather hoping that we could move that to Tuesday. I know it's a disappointment, Ian, and I do appreciate that we've been knocking you back a little bit. I mean, we can do two things. There isn't really very much in the network calls, in the meeting groups, unless anybody wants to jump in as a meeting chair. Doug's just put his hand up. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to only to say that Adam or that Ian has been asking the last couple of meetings to have a chance, and we haven't had time to discuss his tips. And so if we have time, I'd propose that we allow Ian, some time to discuss what he's putting.
That's where I was going, Douglas. Okay.
Way ahead of me again.
Yeah, I'm ahead of you, Douglas. What can I say? So unless what I'm going to say is that if Ian wants to introduce his tip for Syed to do his piece, and then we will come back to it on Tuesday as well. So I'm not going to rush it, but if you can do your intro now, and then if any working group chair wants to say anything after that, then we can do that. But let's go, and then we can tie up on time. So over to you, Ian, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys all for the opportunity to let me introduce these tips. I know they've sparked up quite a bit of discussion in Slack and elsewhere. So I expect that there'll be more opportunities for us to discuss them. But just to briefly introduce them, I wanted to start by kind of explaining the motivation here for why I came up with these tips in the first place. Through having deeper conversations about the token economy and through sort of crunching the numbers a little bit, I've come to the opinion that the current token arrangement might not be ideal for the health of Telos. I think that it's absolutely critical that we get the right token economy structured from the beginning, because if we don't have the right distribution of tokens, and if we're not able to properly compensate all the contributors, those who have contributed thus far, and also future contributors we want to attract to the project, we won't be able to grow the network or even survive through an extended bear market in the crypto market. And so that's sort of kind of like the first thought there. One thing to kind of keep in mind, just to put context, Telos is going to be entering a very competitive market. We're going to be challenging as a smart contract platform, and the more established networks that have, perhaps more infrastructure and larger communities also have much more capital. We're going up against some competitors that have hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in operating capital. And we're trying to do this without an ICO, without raising outside money. We're effectively trying to bootstrap a blockchain, which makes it even more critical that we have the right sort of incentives in place and the right kind of compensation structures in place as well. The other comment I wanted to make is I do feel like I owe the broader community here a bit of an apology for getting this out relatively late in the process. My team and I, as you know, started joining towards the end of August, and we've spent the last couple of weeks sort of crunching the numbers. I think some of you guys know that I just started the MBA program at Stanford, and so I've been way busy with a ton of different stuff. Nonetheless, I don't believe that it's too late for us to make these changes. On a technical level, making a lot of these changes is going to be very simple to do. In many cases, it's changing one number in one line of code, and then also on the network operating agreement. I understand some people are concerned about sort of like the external perception of how these changes may be received. And those are fair points and something that we should address and try to manage. But ultimately, I want us to do what is best for the long-term health of the network. And if there may be some PR consequences because of it, then I think we can address this when the time comes. So without going into a deeper debate, let me just kind of switch over and briefly introduce these. And I'll do a screen share here very quickly. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. Sorry, it's a little crowded here. So there are 7 different tips, and I'll just go through them very quickly. So the first one proposes that we lower the maximum airdrop in the Telos initial distribution from 40,000 to 20,000 Telos per EOS wallet. The primary sort of reasoning here is I think we need to ask ourselves what is sort of the optimal number of Telos to give to EOS as sort of a tribute to the parent chain, and also to engage the EOS community and try to bring some support over to our side. Obviously, we don't know the optimal number, but I think 40,000 is in excess of that. If we were to lower it down 20,000, we would be affecting about an additional 1,000 accounts, and over 98.5% of all the EOS addresses would remain unaffected. So this is only going to affect a very small minority of EOS users, but what it will do is it will raise the relative value of the remaining tokens, and it would allow us to open up tokens for other initiatives as well. So that's tip 13. Tip 14 proposes that we increase the founders rewards pool from 6 million to 25 million Telos. One thing that I'll make a comment here really quick that applies to all of them, and that is that really these proposals are meant to be sort of drafts to provoke conversation. We can certainly adjust these numbers in one direction or another based on the feedback from the community. So when I say 25 million, directionally what I'm saying here is we need to increase the founder rewards pool. I'm throwing out 25 million to start the conversation, but we might land on a different number. Nonetheless, the motivation here is we've got about 100 or so contributors that are going to be, having slices and some claim to this fund. So it's going to be distributed amongst a relatively large network of people. And we've got costs to recover. We also have to keep in mind that right now token performance across the entire market is not doing well. And personally, I think if we have larger token holdings, that'll give us more power to hold our tokens in the long run without having to sell off a large share of our tokens. So this is just asking for us to compensate ourselves a little bit more. What it will do is it will raise the amount of tokens given to the founders reward pool from 1.8% of the circulating supply to 7.5%. That is still a relatively small number. Most of the ICO teams are holding 30% or more for themselves, and this is one centralized business. You look at some of the networks that have sort of a founder's reward or a founder's tax built into the blockchain, like Zcash, for example, where 10% of all the Zcash that are produced go to a particular person. So as far as comparing this to the rest of the industry, we're still being very egalitarian and fair to the rest of the network here. Moving on to tip 15, this proposes increasing the reward to the Telos Foundation from 6 million to 20 million. Again, recognizing that we're going to be competing against very capitalized platforms. I just want to give the foundation some more firepower. We heard from this conversation that we're probably going to have to buy indemnification for arbitrators. So there's going to be expenses that pop up, and this will just allow the foundation to make more of an impact faster. There have been people that have raised some concerns about sort of how this money is allocated. I think one option is to sort of fund it in a contract and then basically put the foundation on an allowance. So I could imagine a situation where we give the foundation maybe 10 million right out the gate, or 5 million. And over the course of, say, 10 years, we give it an additional 1 million. So that might be something to consider as well. Moving on to tip 16, this is the giveaway contest. So this was just kind of a wacky idea I had that I've shared with a few people. But the idea was, in order to sort of raise the profile of Telos outside of the US community, in order to attract interest from broader crypto enthusiasts, in order to showcase the capabilities of the network and the technology, and also perhaps to collect some emails for marketing purposes, we could perhaps look to funding a giveaway where we just create a pool of tokens that we give away to people. And in that proposal, it breaks down how we can sort of launch a contest, which will resemble a lottery of sorts, in the sense that there would be sort of different random payoffs. I think it'd be really cool if we ran a lottery on the Telos blockchain. People can register for it. They get a few tokens when they register, so they're rewarded for registering. The foundation gets some emails so they can sort of contact them and introduce them further to Telos. And then at some point, we just run this contract that will distribute a bunch of tokens to them in various increments. So we don't have to get into the details of how that contest will be designed. I think we can have a lot of fun with that. But what we would need to do initially is just fund a contract with a certain amount of Telos. And then at some point, the BPs could vote to move the tokens from that contract into the contract that manages the contest, thereby launching the contest. And we can take the time we need to build the infrastructure and to get the design details of the contest. So that's 16. 17 proposes to capitalize the worker proposal fund upon launch. I think this is absolutely one of the more critical proposals here. One of the big elements, obviously, is the worker proposal system. That is how we'll be financing ongoing engineering efforts moving forward post-launch. And we have to acknowledge the fact that the worker proposal fund will effectively be broke when Telos launches. It will accumulate tokens through inflation over time, but upon launch, it's not going to be capitalized. And I'm concerned that we're going to have a lot of momentum that we've built up from the launch group. And then we do launch, and we're going to turn to the worker proposal system to finance ongoing operations, and there's not going to be a lot there. So this proposes we just put 10 million into the bank there from the beginning. That will be approximately 2 years worth of what we could expect to earn through inflation. So it kind of just jumpstarts the worker proposal system. Tip 18, front-loading the Telos inflation schedule, and I'll actually click through here for this one. But essentially, the proposal is that we increase the amount of inflation payments in the early years. And this is written in anticipation that the crypto bear market will continue for some period of time. And Telos itself as a token may not perform well. As you guys know, forks are almost always ridiculed and sort of mocked by the broader community. In spite of our great efforts, it's going to take a while for the market to start to acknowledge that through token pricing. But in the meantime, it suggests that through these early and lean years, the block producers and also the worker proposal funds just have more capital. So this is a schedule whereby we start at 5% inflation, and then we gradually decrease until we get down to 2.5.
in year 7. And again, these numbers are all subject to discussion. If you guys feel like we should adjust them in one direction or another, I absolutely want to hear your thoughts on this. But the basic principle here is let's pay out a little bit more through inflation early on, and then we'll gradually reduce that number. And then finally, the very last one here is setting a 1-year expiration date for unclaimed Telos in the Exchange Token Reserve Fund. So this is the fund of tokens that will be allocated to exchanges once they activate support for Telos. That's great. I want to create a sense of urgency among those exchanges and also among their users to go ahead and enable support. I think 1 year is plenty of time, in terms of a technical perspective. If they can't get it done in a year, it's because they didn't prioritize it. But if we have this deadline in place, I think we can get these exchanges to operate with a little bit more urgency. So we'll get listed faster, which will obviously create, positive movement for the currency. It'll open up some liquidity. And if they don't open up support within a year, then those tokens all get burnt. And what that will do is it'll increase the relative value of all the tokens that remain in circulation. So that's tip 19. Finally, I'm going to go to the conclusion here and just share sort of this chart, which kind of gives you a sense of what it would look like if all these proposals were actually approved. I am working on a financial model, which I will be sharing out over the weekend, so you guys can kind of adjust the figures and sort of play through different scenarios. But if we were to approve all of them, this is how the token economy would change. I say that in full recognition of the fact that I don't think we need to approve all of them necessarily. I think any one of these would be a good thing to do on their own. So we can approve one, we could approve all of them, we could approve a combination of them, we could modify them. There's a lot of flexibility here, but I think directionally and sort of spiritually, the proposals are all sort of in line with what Telos needs. So what I want to call out here is if you look at the initial distribution, which is what we have in these two columns, this is what the TBNOA currently calls for. Effectively between the Telos initial distribution and the exchange token reserve, 96% of all of the tokens that will be in circulation are going to go to EOS. So in this current scenario, we are creating a lot of value, but we're not capturing any of the value for those that are actually responsible for activating this network. And the other 4% is allocated amongst the rewards pool for the founders, the Telos Foundation, and the community rewards pool. So 96% going to EOS, 4% going to those that are responsible for activating and maintaining the network moving forward. If we were to pass tips 13 to 19, it'll change the relative balances such that 80% will go to EOS. So we're still making, we are still paying a very large tribute to EOS. We're still going to have a very flat token economy and a very egalitarian structure. But now we have 20% of the tokens going to different constituencies. So 7.5% to the founders rewards pool, 6% to the foundation, 3% to this giveaway jackpot, which will be sort of a user acquisition grab, 3% to the worker proposal fund, and 0.3% to the community rewards pool. I think that's a much healthier distribution. I also think it's still not very generous when you compare it to what most of the other projects have done. Obviously, we want to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And one of the reasons I was drawn to Telos is because of the belief that we should have a relatively egalitarian system, and we don't want a lot of economic or political equality in our system. But nonetheless, we need to be able to have a system that will pay for itself such that we can all be financially self-sustaining. So we're searching for that balance. And I think the original proposal overcorrected in the other direction. And I like to see us come back in the direction of tips 13 and 19. So
okay, Ian, that's it. Thank you very much for that presentation. Yeah. It's very eloquent and extremely well put together. There's lots of food for thought there. I know lots of people want to speak, and we're going to have to make sure we've got time to do that on Tuesday. We are bumping up to the first go-no-go launch, and clearly we need to, there's a lot of people who need to move on to the round call. So thank you for that fantastic introduction to this. I'm sure there's lots of chat that will go on in Slack over the weekend, and we have got Monday, Tuesday, but obviously it'll be on the Tuesday call. So other than for me to say the confirmation of the date of the next meeting is the 16th at 1600 UTC. I'm actually going to call the meeting to a close unless anybody has got anything, a burning issue that they wish to say.
Good for bathroom break. See you later.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm sure we'll see plenty of people on the.
Thanks, everyone. We accomplished a whole lot today. Amazing amount. Thank you. Very
brilliant. Good stuff.
Let's make sure that we give Adam a chance to talk about tip 12 at the beginning of next call, if that's.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. We'll have, now we've got rid of the governance documents, Douglas, we have freed up an inordinate amount of time. So let's get back on that on Tuesday. And we have a governance meeting on Monday. That'll be exciting.
I don't know. Do we? Are we done?
Well, yeah, but party time, Douglas.
Is it ever done?
So yeah, let's call the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, guys.
For your efforts.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. See y'all.
Bye bye.
Cheers, everybody. Good